I never thought I'd see my own son's name on a court document against me. But there it was. Black ink on white paper. David Mitchell versus Margaret Mitchell. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the envelope. I had to sit down on the porch steps because my legs just gave out. My son was suing me. My only child. The boy I carried for 9 months, raised alone after his father walked out. The kid I worked 2 jobs for so he could have everything he needed. The man I sold my dream house for so he could go to medical school debt-free. He was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. I read those words over and over. Petitioner requests the court declare respondent mentally unfit to manage her own affairs. My vision blurred with tears, but I kept reading. David claimed I was showing signs of severe dementia, that I was a danger to myself, that I needed a guardian to control my finances and make decisions for me. Me, Margaret Mitchell. 68 years old, yes, but I balance my checkbook every month. I take my medications on time. I volunteer at the library twice a week. I remember every birthday, every appointment, every promise I've ever made. And he wanted to take it all away from me. The worst part wasn't the legal words or the accusations. It was the signature at the bottom. His signature. The same handwriting I watched develop from messy kindergarten scribbles to the confident script of a doctor. My son's hand had signed this paper that called me incompetent. I sat there on those steps for maybe an hour, maybe more. The neighbors probably saw me, but I didn't care. Mrs. Chen from next door came over eventually, asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer. I just showed her the paper. She gasped. Actually gasped. "Margaret, this can't be real. You're the sharpest person I know." But it was real. David had filed it 3 days ago. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks from now. 6 weeks to prove I wasn't losing my mind. 6 weeks to figure out how my son turned into someone I don't recognize. I finally went inside as the sun started setting. The house felt different now, colder. Every room held memories of David growing up, his baby pictures on the wall, his medical school diploma I had framed, the Mother's Day cards he used to make by hand. When did those cards stop coming? When did the weekly phone calls become monthly, then barely at all? When did I become a problem to solve instead of a mother to love? I made myself tea but couldn't drink it. My mind kept racing back 3 years to when my husband Robert died. The life insurance, the paid-off house, the retirement savings we'd built together. It wasn't a fortune, but it was comfortable. Enough for me to live independently, travel a little, help my grandkids with college someday. Was that what this was about? The money? No, David wasn't like that. He was a doctor. He made good money. He didn't need mine. There had to be another explanation. Maybe he really did think something was wrong with me. Maybe I had missed signs. Maybe I was forgetting things and didn't realize it. That thought terrified me more than the lawsuit. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and almost called him. Almost. But something stopped me. If he wanted to talk to me, he wouldn't have sent papers through a lawyer. He would have come to see me. He would have held my hand and expressed his concerns like a son should. Instead, he ambushed me with legal documents. I cried that night like I haven't cried since Robert's funeral. Maybe harder, because at least when Robert died, I knew he loved me until his last breath. But this felt like David was trying to bury me while I was still alive. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you'd die for, like this video, I need to know I'm not alone in this pain. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's signature on those papers. By morning, I looked like hell. Red eyes, gray skin, hair a mess. I looked exactly like the incompetent old woman he was trying to paint me as. That thought made me angry. Really angry. And anger, I discovered, was better than despair. I showered, dressed in my best outfit, did my makeup carefully. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove to David's house. My hands were steady on the wheel. My mind was clear. If he thought I was losing it, I'd prove him wrong face to face. The house looked perfect, like always. David and Jessica had bought it 5 years ago, right after he finished his residency. I'd helped with the down payment. Another sacrifice I'd made happily, because that's what mothers do. I rang the doorbell, waited, rang again. Jessica answered. My daughter-in-law. 36 years old, blonde, beautiful, always dressed like she was going to a country club. She looked at me like I was a door-to-door salesman. Margaret, this isn't a good time. Not Mom, not even hi, just my first name, said with ice in her voice. I need to see David, I said, keeping my voice level. It's important. He's at the hospital. His shift doesn't end until 7. She started closing the door. I put my hand out to stop it. Jessica, what's going on? Why is David doing this to me? Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Satisfaction? I couldn't tell. David is concerned about your welfare, Margaret. We both are. You've been acting strange, forgetting things. We think you need help. Strange how? What have I forgotten? She sighed, like I was exhausting her. You didn't come to Lily's birthday party last month. You forgot your own granddaughter's birthday. My heart stopped. I wasn't invited. Yes, you were. David called you twice. No, he didn't. I check my call log every day. There's nothing from David in over 3 weeks. I pulled out my phone to show her, but she waved it away. See? This is what we mean. You're confused. Paranoid, even. David's been trying to reach you, but you're convinced he hasn't. That's not normal, Margaret. I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. Was she lying? Or was I really losing track of things? No. I trusted my phone records more than I trusted her words right now. I want to see David, I repeated. Tonight. Tell him to come to my house after his shift. I'll let him know, Jessica said, but her tone made it clear she wouldn't. She closed the door in my face. I stood there on their perfect porch, staring at their perfect door, feeling anything but perfect myself. A neighbor was watching me from across the street. I wondered what they thought. Crazy old lady bothering the nice young couple. I drove home in a daze. When I got there, I did something methodical, something the old Margaret would do, the competent Margaret. I went through every phone record from the past 6 months, printed them out, highlighted every call to and from David. The pattern was clear. His calls had dropped off dramatically after Robert's funeral, and in the last 2 months, nothing. Not one call from him to me? Jessica was lying. But why? What did she gain from painting me as confused and paranoid? Then it hit me like a truck. The money. Jessica had always lived beyond their means. Designer clothes, expensive cars, that house that was too big for them. I'd heard David stress about finances once or twice, though he always brushed it off when I asked. What if they needed money? What if declaring me incompetent was the fastest way to get control of my assets? No. That was too horrible, too calculated. David wouldn't do that. He was my son. I raised him better than that. But the papers on my kitchen table said otherwise. I called the only person I could think of who might give me straight answers. Patricia, my old colleague from the high school where I taught for 30 years. She'd retired the same year I did, and we'd stayed close. I hadn't talked to her in weeks, though. Maybe months. Why hadn't I called her? I always called Patricia. Margaret. Her voice was warm, concerned. Oh, honey, I've been worried sick about you. Are you okay? Why worried? I asked carefully. David called me about a month ago. Said you'd been isolating yourself, not answering calls, seeming confused. He asked me to check on you, but when I came by, you didn't answer the door. I tried 3 times. My blood ran cold. Patricia? I never heard you knock. When did you come? She told me the dates. I checked my calendar. All 3 times, I'd been at the library volunteering. My regular schedule. Same as always. Patricia, I think something really wrong is happening, and it's not with my mind. I told her everything. The lawsuit, Jessica's lies, the missing invitation to Lily's birthday. She listened in shocked silence. You need a lawyer, Margaret. A good one. This sounds like elder abuse. Elder abuse. The words made me feel ancient and vulnerable. But she was right. I don't know any lawyers, I admitted. I do. My niece, Elena. She handles these kinds of cases. Let me call her right now. 20 minutes later, I had an appointment for the next morning. Patricia insisted on coming with me. That night, I finally broke down again. But this time it was different. This time, mixed with the tears was something else. Determination. My son might have thrown the first punch, but I wasn't going down without a fight. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to fight against your own family? I need to hear I'm not crazy for feeling this way. Elena Rodriguez's office was small but organized. Law books lined the walls, certificates hung in simple frames. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Patricia sat beside me, holding my hand like I might fall apart. Maybe I would. Mrs. Mitchell, tell me everything, Elena said, pulling out a legal pad. So I did. Every detail. The lawsuit, Jessica's lies, the phone records, the missing invitation. My voice cracked a few times, but I got through it. Elena took notes, asked questions, never once looked at me like I was fragile or confused. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. This is more common than you'd think. Adult children, often influenced by spouses, attempting to gain control of aging parents' assets through incompetency proceedings. The legal term is financial exploitation. But David's a doctor. He makes good money. Debt doesn't discriminate, Mrs. Mitchell. Medical school loans, mortgage, lifestyle inflation. I've seen physicians in worse financial shape than construction workers. She flipped through my papers. Your husband's life insurance was how much? $300,000. Plus, the house is paid off, worth maybe $450, and we have about $200 in retirement savings. So we're talking nearly $1 million in assets. Elena's expression hardened. That's motive. Did your relationship with David change after your husband died? I thought back. He was supportive at first, helped with the funeral arrangements. But then, Jessica started making comments about how the house was too big for me, how I should consider moving somewhere smaller, more manageable. She even brought me brochures for senior living communities. How long after the funeral? Maybe 6 weeks. Elena wrote something down. And you said no to moving. Of course I said no. Robert and I built that house. Every room has memories. Our bedroom still smells like him sometimes. I'm not leaving. My voice broke on the last word. Patricia squeezed my hand tighter. That's when things changed, wasn't it? Elena asked gently. After you refused to move? The realization hit me like cold water. Yes. That's exactly when David started pulling away. The calls got less frequent. He was always too busy to visit. And Jessica, she started these little digs. You look tired, Margaret. Are you eating enough? You seem confused. She was building a narrative, Elena said, planting seeds. So when David filed this petition, there'd be a history of concern. Very calculated. She looked at me directly. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Is there any truth to their claims? Any memory issues, confusion? Anything that might concern you? I wanted to say no immediately, but I forced myself to think. Really think. I forgot where I parked at the grocery store last month. Walked around the parking lot for 10 minutes before I found my car. That's called being human, Elena said dryly. I did that yesterday. What else? Sometimes I walk into a room and forget why I went there. I do that 5 times a day. Next? I can't think of anything else. I pay my bills on time. I've never missed an appointment. I still tutor kids in math on weekends. I'm reading a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt right now, and I can tell you everything about it. Elena smiled. Then we have a strong case. But I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Mitchell. Even if we win, this will damage your relationship with your son. Possibly beyond repair. Are you prepared for that? The question knocked the air from my lungs. Was I prepared to lose my son? Really lose him? Not just the distant stranger he'd become, but lose him forever? I thought about David as a little boy, 7 years old, crying because the kids at school said he didn't have a real family since his dad left. I'd held him and told him we were a family, him and me, and that was more real than anything. I'd promised I'd always be there for him, and I had been. Through every skinned knee, every heartbreak, every triumph, I'd been there. But where was he now? Where was that boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers? Where was the teenager who defended me when his friends made jokes about single mothers? Where was the man who cried at my wedding to Robert and said he was glad I'd finally found someone who deserved me? When did he become someone who could sign papers calling me incompetent? I don't want to lose my son, I whispered, but I can't let him do this to me. I can't let them take everything Robert and I worked for. I can't let them put me away like I'm already dead. Then we fight, Elena said firmly. I'll need medical records, recent ones. When was your last physical? 3 months ago. Dr. Chen said I was healthier than most 50-year-olds. Perfect. I'll subpoena those records. I'll also need character witnesses, people who can testify to your mental competence. Patricia spoke up. I'll testify. And I can get at least 5 other teachers who see her regularly. Your neighbors? Elena asked me. Mrs. Chen next door. We have coffee twice a week, she'd testify. And probably the Johnsons across the street. Elena made more notes. Good. We'll also have you evaluated by an independent psychiatrist, court-appointed, neutral. That evaluation will be crucial. She looked at me seriously. Mrs. Mitchell, they're going to try to paint you as declining, forgetful, maybe even delusional. They'll twist innocent things into evidence. Are you ready for that? No, I wasn't ready. I'd never be ready to hear my own son call me crazy in front of a judge. But I nodded anyway. One more thing, Elena said. Don't contact David or Jessica directly. Nothing in writing, no calls, no visits. Anything you say can and will be used against you. If David reaches out, tell him to speak to your attorney. That's me now. The formality of it made everything real. This wasn't a misunderstanding I could clear up over coffee. This was war. Against my own child. I left Elena's office with a stack of papers to sign and a court date circled in red. 6 weeks away. February 14th. Valentine's Day. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Patricia drove me home. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? When she dropped me off, she hugged me tight. You're going to get through this, Margaret. You're the strongest woman I know. But I didn't feel strong. I felt like something inside me had shattered, and I didn't know if I could put the pieces back together. That night, I looked through photo albums, David's baby pictures, first day of school, high school graduation, medical school acceptance letter, both of us crying happy tears. His wedding day, dancing with me while Robert watched with tears in his eyes. In every picture, we were smiling. In every picture, we looked like we loved each other. When did that become a lie? Follow my story, because what happens next in that courtroom will change everything, and you need to hear how this ends. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Elena said it was standard procedure, nothing to worry about. But I was terrified. What if they found something wrong with me? What if there was a problem I didn't know about? What if David was right? Dr. Sarah Patel's office was in a medical building downtown. Comfortable chairs, soft lighting, paintings of beaches on the walls. Everything designed to make you feel calm. It didn't work. She was Indian American, maybe 50, with a warm smile that seemed genuine. "Mrs. Mitchell, I want you to relax. This isn't a test you can fail. I'm just here to assess your cognitive function, your mental state, your ability to manage your daily life. Be honest with me, and we'll be fine." For 3 hours, she asked me questions. Some were easy. What year is it? Who's the president? Count backwards from 100 by sevens. Those felt insulting, like I was a child. Others were harder. She asked about my emotions, how I felt about the lawsuit, about David, about being alone since Robert died. I cried during that part, couldn't help it. 3 years since Robert's death, and sometimes the grief still hit me like a train. Dr. Patel handed me tissues and waited patiently. "Do you ever feel like giving up?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Especially now. When your own son thinks you're incompetent, it makes you question everything. Maybe I am losing it. Maybe I don't see it. But you don't really believe that, do you?" I thought about it. Really thought. No, I know my mind is sharp. I know I'm capable. What I'm losing isn't my mind. It's my son, and that's so much worse. Dr. Patel wrote something down. "Tell me about your daily routine." So I did. Wake up at 6:30, coffee and toast. Read the newspaper, do the crossword puzzle. Mondays and Thursdays, I volunteer at the library. Tuesdays, I tutor math at the community center. Wednesdays, I have coffee with Mrs. Chen. Weekends, I garden, read, sometimes drive to the beach. "You sound very independent and active," she observed. "I am. That's why this whole thing is insane. I'm not some confused old woman wandering around in her nightgown. I'm living my life. I'm fine." "How do you manage your finances?" "I balance my checkbook every month, pay bills online. I have a spreadsheet for my budget. I've never missed a payment, never overdrafted. I even do my own taxes, though Robert always handled that when he was alive. I taught myself." She asked me to solve some math problems, calculate percentages, figure out compound interest, balance a hypothetical budget. I did it all easily. Math was my subject when I taught. Numbers made sense to me. Then she asked me to remember a list of words, repeated them back immediately, and again 15 minutes later. All correct. By the end, I felt wrung out, but cautiously hopeful. Dr. Patel's expression gave nothing away, but she shook my hand warmly. "You'll receive a copy of my report," she said, "as will the court and both attorneys. But Mrs. Mitchell, off the record, you're one of the sharpest 68-year-olds I've evaluated. Whatever is happening here, it isn't cognitive decline." I wanted to hug her. Instead, I just thanked her and left before I started crying again. Elena called 2 days later. "I have Dr. Patel's report. It's excellent." She found no evidence of dementia, no cognitive impairment, no signs of incompetence. She actually wrote that you demonstrated exceptional mental acuity for any age. This is exactly what we needed. Relief flooded through me. "So we'll win?" "It helps tremendously. But Margaret, you need to prepare yourself. David's attorney will have their own evidence. They'll twist things, take normal behavior, and make it sound concerning. The hearing won't be easy." She was right. 2 weeks before the court date, David's attorney filed their evidence. Elena brought it to my house because she didn't want me to read it alone. I should have listened to her warning. They'd compiled a list of incidents. Evidence of declining mental capacity and erratic behavior. I read through it with Elena sitting across from me, and with each item, I felt sicker. Subject failed to attend granddaughter's birthday party, claiming she wasn't invited despite multiple phone calls. Subject reported to neighbors that her son never calls, despite documented attempts to reach her. Subject left stove burner on for over an hour, discovered by son during wellness check. Subject has been observed talking to herself in grocery store parking lot. Subject became verbally aggressive when daughter-in-law expressed concern about her well-being. Subject displays paranoid ideation, believing family members are conspiring against her. Every single item was a lie or a distortion. The birthday party I wasn't invited to. The phone calls that never happened. The stove burner was a complete fabrication. I'd never left the stove on. The talking to myself was me on a Bluetooth call with Patricia. The verbal aggression was me standing up for myself when Jessica lied to my face. But reading it like this, all compiled together, it painted a picture of a confused, paranoid, declining old woman. "This is what they'll present to the judge," Elena said quietly. "This is their case." "It's all lies," I whispered. "How can they lie like this?" "Because there's money involved, and people do terrible things for money, even to their own mothers." She squeezed my hand. "But we have evidence too. Medical records, psychiatric evaluation, witness testimonies, phone records that prove there were no calls. The truth is on our side." But as I sat there reading those horrible words, I realized something that made my chest physically ache. David believed this. Or at least, he was willing to pretend he believed it. My son, who I'd raised to value truth and integrity, was willing to go into court and tell these lies about me. To a judge, under oath. Who was this man? Because he wasn't the boy I'd raised. That night, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the stove burner lie. It was so specific, so calculated. Discovered by son during wellness check. David had a key to my house. I'd given it to him years ago for emergencies. Had he been coming into my house when I wasn't home? Going through my things? Looking for evidence to use against me? The thought made my skin crawl. My own home didn't feel safe anymore. I got up at 2 in the morning and changed the locks. Called a locksmith for an emergency service, paid extra. By sunrise, David's key wouldn't work anymore. If he wanted in my house, he'd have to break down the door. Mrs. Chen saw the locksmith leaving and came over later with soup. "Margaret, honey, what's going on?" I told her everything. She'd already agreed to testify, but I wanted her to know the full story. She listened, her face growing more horrified with each detail. "That boy," she said when I finished. "I used to babysit him when you worked late. Sweet kid. What happened to him?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I've been asking myself that for weeks. Maybe I didn't raise him right. Maybe I failed somewhere." "No." Mrs. Chen's voice was sharp. "You don't get to blame yourself for his choices. You were a wonderful mother. I watched you sacrifice everything for that child. This isn't on you, Margaret. This is on him." But it didn't feel that way. It felt like somehow, somewhere, I'd lost my son. And I couldn't figure out when or how or why. The court date was 1 week away. Elena called every day to prepare me. What questions they'd ask, how to answer, how to stay calm even when they tried to rattle me. "Remember," she said, "you're not just fighting for your assets. You're fighting for your dignity, your independence, your right to live your own life. Don't let them take that from you." But the truth was, they'd already taken something from me. Something more valuable than money or property. They'd taken my son. And I didn't know if I'd ever get him back. Share this with someone who understands that betrayal from family cuts deeper than any stranger's knife ever could. The night before the hearing, I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. I laid out my clothes 3 times, changing my mind each time. What do you wear when your son tries to convince a judge you're losing your mind? I settled on a navy blue dress, simple and dignified. The pearl earrings Robert gave me for our 10th anniversary. I wanted to look competent, stable, like someone who had her life together. Even though inside, I was falling apart. Patricia called at 9. I'm picking you up tomorrow at 8. Don't argue. You don't have to do this. Margaret, shut up. I'm your friend. I'm going to be there. End of discussion. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face. Not the man he'd become, but the boy he used to be. 6 years old, holding my hand on his first day of school. 12, crying in my arms when his best friend moved away. 16, nervous before his driver's test. 24, calling me from medical school to say he'd aced his boards. Mom, I couldn't have done this without you, he'd said that day. Everything I am is because of you. When did that gratitude turn into this? When did I become someone he needed to eliminate? At 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table in the dark. The house was so quiet. Too quiet. Robert used to snore, and I'd complained about it. Now I'd give anything to hear that sound again. I pulled out the box of letters I'd saved over the years. Birthday cards David had made in elementary school. To the best mom in the world. Mother's Day cards from middle school. Thanks for always being there. A letter he'd written from college. Mom, I know I don't say it enough, but I love you. You're my hero. I read them all, every single one. And with each word, my heart broke a little more. This was real. This hearing was actually happening. In a few hours, I'd be sitting in a courtroom while my son tried to convince a judge that I wasn't capable of managing my own life. Patricia arrived at 8 sharp. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough. Today, I needed to be strong. Elena met us at the courthouse. She looked professional in a sharp black suit, carrying a leather briefcase stuffed with documents. Our evidence. Our truth. Remember, she said as we walked through security, stay calm. Answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer extra information. And Margaret, when you see David, don't react. No matter what you're feeling, keep your face neutral. I don't know if I can do that. You can. You're stronger than you think. But I didn't feel strong. I felt ancient and fragile and so tired. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, uncomfortable chairs, fluorescent lights that made everything look harsh and cold. A few people were scattered in the gallery. Mrs. Chen was there, and the Johnsons, 3 of my former teaching colleagues. They'd all come to support me. And then I saw him. David was sitting at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s. Jessica sat behind him in the first row, wearing a black dress like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. The funeral of our family. David didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, hands folded on the table. He looked tired. Thinner than I remembered. There were shadows under his eyes. Part of me wanted to go to him, ask if he was eating enough, sleeping enough. Old habits die hard. Even now, even after everything, my first instinct was to mother him, but I stayed in my seat. All rise for the Honorable Judge Raymond Martinez. The judge was older, maybe 70, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. He settled into his chair and looked over the papers in front of him. This is a petition for guardianship based on alleged mental incompetence, he said. His voice was deep, authoritative. Dr. David Mitchell petitions the court to appoint him as guardian for his mother, Margaret Mitchell, age 68. Is the petitioner present? David stood. Yes, Your Honor. It was the first time I'd heard his voice in months. It sounded the same. Why did it sound the same when everything else had changed? Is the respondent present? Elena guided me to my feet. Yes, Your Honor. Margaret Mitchell, represented by Elena Rodriguez. The judge nodded. Let's proceed. Counselor, you may present your opening statement. David's attorney stood. Her name was Linda Harper, according to the nameplate on her table. She looked at me with what seemed like pity, but I knew it was performance. Your Honor, this is a difficult case. Dr. Mitchell loves his mother deeply, but love sometimes means making hard decisions. Over the past year, Mrs. Margaret Mitchell has shown increasing signs of cognitive decline, memory loss, confusion, paranoid ideation, erratic behavior. Dr. Mitchell has tried to help his mother, but she refuses to acknowledge there's a problem. This petition isn't about taking anything from Mrs. Mitchell. It's about protecting her, from herself and from those who might take advantage of her vulnerable state. My jaw clenched. Elena squeezed my hand under the table. We have documented evidence of Mrs. Mitchell's decline, Linda continued. Missed appointments, forgotten events, dangerous behavior like leaving the stove on, verbal aggression toward family members trying to help, and concerning financial decisions that suggest she's no longer capable of managing her substantial assets. Dr. Mitchell doesn't want his mother's money. He wants to ensure she's safe and cared for. That's all. She sat down. The judge turned to Elena. Ms. Rodriguez? Elena stood, and when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. Your Honor, this isn't a case about a concerned son trying to help his declining mother. This is a case about financial exploitation. Mrs. Margaret Mitchell is a healthy, competent, independent woman who has the misfortune of having assets her son and daughter-in-law covet. Every allegation in the petition is either a complete fabrication or a willful distortion of innocent events. We have medical evidence, psychiatric evaluation, and testimony from multiple witnesses that Mrs. Mitchell is fully capable of managing her own affairs. The only thing declining here is her son's moral compass. David flinched. I saw it. A tiny movement. But I knew my son's body language. Elena's words had hit him. Good. They should. We'll hear from the petitioner first, Judge Martinez said. Dr. Mitchell, you may take the stand. David stood and walked to the witness box. He was sworn in. His hand shook slightly on the Bible. And then he looked at me. Finally looked at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. For just a second, I saw something in his face. Regret? Shame? Pain? But then it was gone. His expression hardened. He turned to his attorney and nodded. He was ready to testify against me. My own son was about to tell a judge all the reasons I wasn't fit to live my own life, and all I could think was, I don't even recognize you anymore. If you've ever watched someone you love transform into a stranger, like this video, let me know I'm not the only one living this nightmare. Linda Harper stood and approached David with a gentle smile, like she was about to help him do something noble instead of destroying his own mother. Dr. Mitchell, can you describe your relationship with your mother? David's voice was steady, rehearsed. We've always been close. She raised me alone after my father left. She sacrificed everything for me. I love her very much. The past tense wasn't lost on me. Not, I love her. Loved. Like I was already gone. When did you first become concerned about her mental state? About a year ago. Small things at first. She'd repeat stories she'd already told me. Forget conversations we'd had. But after my stepfather died 3 years ago, it got worse. Lies. All lies. I wanted to stand up and scream it, but Elena's hand was firm on my arm. Can you give specific examples? David nodded, and I watched him transform into the concerned physician, the worried son. He was good at this. Convincing. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed him myself. Last year on Thanksgiving, she put the turkey in the oven and forgot about it for over 6 hours, completely burned. She didn't even remember putting it in. He paused, shaking his head sadly. On my daughter Lily's 8th birthday, Mom didn't show up. When I called her, she insisted she hadn't been invited. But I'd called her 3 times to remind her. She had no memory of those conversations. That must have been difficult for you. It was devastating. For me and especially for Lily. She loves her grandmother. His voice cracked slightly. Perfect acting. And it scared me. If Mom couldn't remember a child's birthday, what else was she forgetting? I felt sick. The Thanksgiving incident never happened. We'd had Thanksgiving at a restaurant that year because I didn't want to cook in the house without Robert. David knew that. He'd been there. Dr. Mitchell, as a physician, did you have professional concerns as well? Yes. I started noticing classic signs of early dementia, confusion about time and place, difficulty with familiar tasks, problems with words and communication, withdrawal from social activities, changes in mood and personality. Elena leaned close and whispered, "He's describing textbook dementia symptoms that have nothing to do with you. We'll refute this." But listening to David list those symptoms in his calm doctor voice made them sound so real, so clinical, like he was diagnosing a patient, not betraying his mother. Did you try to discuss your concerns with her? Many times, but she became defensive, even hostile. She accused me of trying to control her life, of wanting her money. He looked directly at me then, and his eyes were cold. That's when I knew the paranoid ideation had begun. My mother started believing her own family was conspiring against her. The word paranoid stung. Because wasn't I being paranoid? Wasn't I sitting here convinced my son and his wife were plotting to steal from me? Except it wasn't paranoia if it was actually happening. Tell the court about the incident with the stove. I stopped by to check on her about 2 months ago. I could smell gas before I even opened the door. Mom had left a burner on high with nothing on it for God knows how long. The kitchen was full of gas. If I hadn't arrived when I did, if there'd been a spark, he trailed off, letting the implication hang. That never happened. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. Judge Martinez looked at me sharply. "Mrs. Mitchell, you'll have your chance to testify. Please remain silent." Elena squeezed my arm harder. A warning. David continued as if I hadn't spoken. That's when I knew I had to take action. It wasn't safe for her to live alone anymore. But every time I tried to discuss alternative living arrangements, she refused to even consider it. She became verbally aggressive. My wife Jessica witnessed this on multiple occasions. Speaking of your wife, has she observed these changes as well? Yes. Jessica has been incredibly concerned. She's tried to help Mom, offered to take her to doctor's appointments, suggested we hire a caregiver. But Mom accuses Jessica of trying to steal from her, of manipulating me. The paranoia has extended to include my wife as well. I looked at Jessica sitting in the gallery. She was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, playing the concerned daughter-in-law perfectly. I wanted to rip that tissue out of her hand and tell the judge the truth. That she was the one who started all of this. That she'd systematically isolated me from my son over the past 3 years. Dr. Mitchell, this must be emotionally difficult for you. It is. David's voice actually trembled. I don't want to take away my mother's independence. I don't want her money. I just want her safe. I want her to get the help she needs before something terrible happens. Before she hurts herself or worse. He looked at the judge directly. Your Honor, I'm not doing this out of greed or malice. I'm doing this because I love my mother, and sometimes love means making the hard choice, even when the person you love hates you for it. The courtroom was silent. Even the people in the gallery who came to support me seemed affected by his performance, because that's what it was, a performance. But it was a good one. Linda returned to her seat. Your witness, Ms. Rodriguez. Elena stood slowly, gathering her papers. When she approached David, her expression was cold. Dr. Mitchell, you testified that you called your mother 3 times about your daughter's birthday party. Is that correct? Yes. And you have phone records to prove these calls? David hesitated, just for a second. I called from the hospital, the work line. So no personal phone records? No, but did you leave messages? I don't remember if I did or not. Probably. You don't remember? Interesting. Because your mother checks her messages religiously. She has no record of any messages from you about this party. Elena pulled out a document. In fact, according to phone records from both your personal cell and your mother's phone, you haven't called her in over 2 months. How do you explain that? David's jaw tightened. The records must be incomplete. Or you're lying. Objection. Linda jumped to her feet. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Rodriguez, rephrase. Let me ask it differently. Dr. Mitchell, you testified about a Thanksgiving turkey incident. What year was this? Last year. November. Are you certain? Yes. Elena pulled out another document. This is a receipt from Riverside Restaurant dated November 23rd of last year. Thanksgiving. A reservation for 4 people under the name David Mitchell. You, your wife, your daughter, and your mother all had Thanksgiving dinner at a restaurant. There was no turkey in any oven. Was there? David's face went pale. I may have gotten the years confused. Or you made it up entirely. Objection. Withdrawn. Elena moved closer. Let's talk about the gas leak from the stove. You testified this happened 2 months ago. What date specifically? I don't remember the exact date. Was it during the day, evening? Afternoon, I think. And you said you used your key to enter your mother's house? Yes. Except your mother's phone records show she was at the public library volunteering that entire afternoon, from noon until 5 p.m. 6 witnesses can confirm she was there. So how did you discover this gas leak in an empty house? David's composure cracked. I must be thinking of a different day. Or it never happened at all. The judge was leaning forward now, watching David closely. Elena wasn't done. Dr. Mitchell, how much do you owe in medical school loans? Objection. Relevance? Linda was on her feet again. Your Honor, it goes to motive, Elena said calmly. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Dr. Mitchell. David's face was red now. About $200,000. And your mortgage? I don't see how... Answer the question. $450,000. And you're currently 3 months behind on that mortgage, aren't you? Silence. Dr. Mitchell? We've had some financial difficulties, he admitted quietly. Financial difficulties that would be solved if you had access to your mother's $1 million estate? That's not what this is about. Isn't it? Elena's voice was sharp now. You're drowning in debt. Your mother refused to give you money or sell her house, so you decided to take control of her assets by having her declared incompetent. Isn't that the truth? No. Then explain to this court why every single incident you've described is either provably false or conveniently unverifiable. Explain why you haven't actually called your mother in months, but claim you've been desperately trying to help her. Explain why. Because I didn't want it to be true. David's voice broke. I didn't want to believe my mother was losing her mind. So maybe I got some details wrong. Maybe I'm confused about some things. But that doesn't mean she's fine. She's not fine. Look at her. She's isolated. She's paranoid. She's perfectly competent, Elena cut him off. And you know it. This whole petition is a fraud, Dr. Mitchell. And you know that too. David didn't answer. He just sat there, staring at his hands. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw my son clearly. Not the villain I'd been imagining. Not the stranger who'd betrayed me. I saw a man who was broken, desperate, and drowning. But that didn't make what he was doing to me okay. Tell me in the comments, can you forgive someone who betrayed you, even if you understand why they did it? Because I still don't know the answer. When Elena finished with David, he looked like he'd been hollowed out. The judge dismissed him from the stand, and he walked back to his table without looking at me. His attorney whispered something to him, but he didn't respond. Just sat there, staring at nothing. The petitioner may call their next witness, Judge Martinez said. Linda stood. We call Jessica Mitchell. Jessica walked to the stand with her head held high, perfectly composed. She wore that black dress like armor, And when she was sworn in, her voice didn't waver at all. She was better at this than David. Colder, more calculated. Mrs. Mitchell, how long have you been married to Dr. Mitchell? 7 years this June. And what's your relationship been like with your mother-in-law? Jessica smiled sadly. I've always tried to have a good relationship with Margaret. She's family, but it's been challenging, especially in recent years. The use of my first name was deliberate, not my mother-in-law. Margaret, creating distance. Can you describe these challenges? Margaret has become increasingly hostile toward me. She accuses me of things I haven't done, says I'm trying to steal from her, turn David against her. It's been very hurtful. Jessica's voice caught perfectly. I've only ever tried to help. I felt Elena tense beside me. Can you give specific examples of Margaret's behavior toward you? Several months ago, I brought her information about a lovely retirement community, very upscale with activities and medical care on site. I thought she might want to consider it, since the house is so big for one person. She threw the brochures at me, actually threw them, called me horrible names, said I was trying to put her away so David and I could take her house. That was a distortion. I'd politely declined and said I wanted to stay in my home. Jessica was the one who'd gotten angry, insisting I was being stubborn and difficult. And the incident on your daughter's birthday? Lily was devastated when her grandmother didn't show up. I'd personally reminded Margaret about the party 2 days before. She seemed confused when I mentioned it, but said she'd written it down. Then she never came. When David called her, she became belligerent, accused us of deliberately excluding her. It broke my daughter's heart. Objection, Elena said calmly. The witness is testifying about a conversation she wasn't present for. Sustained. Mrs. Mitchell, stick to what you personally witnessed. Jessica nodded demurely. Of course, Your Honor. What I personally witnessed was my daughter crying because her grandmother forgot about her birthday. And when Margaret came to our house days later, she was paranoid, agitated. She actually accused me of lying to her face. Because you were lying! The words came out before I could stop them again. The judge's expression hardened. Mrs. Mitchell, that's your second outburst. One more and I'll hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. My voice was barely a whisper. Elena's hand gripped my arm so tight it hurt. Jessica continued, playing the victim perfectly. You can see the hostility, Your Honor. Even here in court, she can't control herself. At home, it's worse. She's become verbally abusive. David has tried to maintain a relationship, but it's become impossible. And frankly, I'm worried about our daughter being around her grandmother's erratic behavior. That hit me like a physical blow. She was trying to keep Lily from me, my granddaughter, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep as a baby, read stories to, taught to bake cookies. Mrs. Mitchell, in your opinion, is Margaret capable of living independently? No. She needs supervision. She needs help. I've suggested hiring a caregiver, but she refuses. She's a danger to herself, and David and I can't watch her 24 hours a day. This guardianship is necessary, for her own safety. When Elena cross-examined her, Jessica was ready. Every question was met with a smooth answer, a sad expression, a performance worthy of an award. Mrs. Mitchell, you testified that you personally reminded Margaret about the birthday party. What date was this reminder? I don't recall the exact date, about 2 days before. And you're certain this conversation happened? Absolutely. Where did it take place? At Margaret's house. I stopped by to drop off some groceries. Elena pulled out a document. According to your credit card records, you made no purchases at any grocery store that week. How did you buy these groceries? Jessica didn't miss a beat. I used cash. Do you have a receipt? I don't keep receipts for groceries. It was maddening. Every lie had a convenient explanation. Every fabrication was impossible to definitively disprove. But Elena kept pushing. Mrs. Mitchell, you and your husband are currently 3 months behind on your mortgage. Is that correct? we've had some temporary financial setbacks. You also have 2 car payments totaling $1,200 a month and credit card debt exceeding $60,000. Would you say you're in financial distress? We're managing. Are you aware that if this guardianship is granted, your husband would have access to his mother's assets? This isn't about money. No? Then why did you ask Margaret to sell her house and move to a retirement community just weeks after her husband died, when she was grieving and vulnerable? I was trying to help her. The house is too big. The house is worth $450,000, money that would solve all your financial problems, wouldn't it? Objection! Linda was furious now. Counsel is badgering the witness. Overruled. Answer the question, Mrs. Mitchell. Jessica's mask slipped for just a second. I saw anger flash in her eyes. We don't need Margaret's money. But you want it. No. Then why are you here? Because someone needs to protect Margaret from herself, since she clearly can't. The courtroom felt electric. Even the judge was watching Jessica with sharp interest now. Elena returned to our table, and Linda called one more witness, a former neighbor who claimed to have seen me wandering confused in my bathrobe at odd hours. Except I'd never met this woman before in my life. Elena established in cross-examination that she'd moved into the neighborhood just 3 months ago and lived 4 houses down. She had no personal relationship with me whatsoever. Her testimony was vague and clearly coached. Then it was our turn. Elena called Dr. Sarah Patel first, the psychiatrist who'd evaluated me. She was professional, clear, unshakable. In your professional opinion, does Mrs. Margaret Mitchell show any signs of dementia or cognitive impairment? None whatsoever. Her cognitive function is excellent. Her memory is sharp. Her reasoning abilities are intact. She scored in the 95th percentile for her age group on every test I administered. Did you find any evidence of paranoid ideation? No. Mrs. Mitchell expressed understandable distress about this legal proceeding, but her perceptions of events were logical and grounded in reality. Being upset that your son is suing you isn't paranoia. It's a rational response to a genuinely upsetting situation. In your opinion, is Mrs. Mitchell capable of managing her own affairs? Absolutely. She's one of the most competent and independent seniors I've evaluated. There is no medical or psychological basis for this guardianship. Linda tried to shake her on cross-examination, but Dr. Patel was solid. She'd done hundreds of these evaluations. She knew her field. And she wasn't going to be bullied into changing her professional opinion. Next, Elena called Mrs. Chen, my neighbor. She was nervous on the stand, wringing her hands, but her voice was steady. Mrs. Chen, how long have you known Margaret Mitchell? 15 years, since she and Robert moved into the neighborhood. How often do you see her? 2 or 3 times a week. We have coffee together on Wednesdays. She helps me with my computer when I have problems. We watch Jeopardy together sometimes. In your observation, has Margaret shown any signs of mental decline? Mrs. Chen actually laughed. Decline? That woman beats me at Jeopardy every single time. She remembers everything. Birthdays, appointments, conversations we had months ago. Her mind is sharper than mine, and I'm only 62. Has she ever seemed confused or disoriented? Never. Not once. Margaret is the most organized, capable person I know. Mrs. Chen looked directly at David. And what her son is doing to her is shameful. She's a good mother. She doesn't deserve this. Objection, Linda said weakly. Sustained. The jury will disregard that last statement. But there was no jury. Just the judge, and he'd heard every word. Patricia testified next, then 2 other former teachers, then the Johnsons from across the street. Every single person said the same thing. I was competent, capable, independent, sharp. The evidence was overwhelming. But as I sat there listening to people defend my sanity, all I could think about was David. Sitting across the courtroom. His head bowed, his shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. And despite everything, despite all the lies and the betrayal and the pain, part of me wanted to go to him, wanted to hold him like I did when he was small and tell him everything would be okay. That's what it means to be a mother, I guess. You never stop loving them, even when they break your heart. Follow my story, because the judge's final decision will shock everyone in that courtroom, including me. After all the witnesses testified, Judge Martinez called for a recess. "We'll reconvene in 30 minutes for closing arguments," he said. Elena led me to a small conference room down the hall. Patricia brought me water I couldn't drink. My hands were shaking too badly. "You're doing great," Elena said. "The evidence is on our side. Dr. Patel's evaluation alone should be enough, but combined with all the witness testimony and the inconsistencies in David's story, we have a strong case. So we'll win?" She hesitated. "I think so. But Margaret, judges have a lot of discretion in these cases, and sometimes they err on the side of caution when it comes to elderly people, even healthy ones. I want you to be prepared for any outcome." The thought of losing made my chest tight. What would happen if the judge sided with David? Would I be forced into a retirement home? Would David control my money, my house, my life? Would I become a prisoner in my own existence? "I can't let that happen," I whispered. "I can't." "We won't let it happen," Patricia said fiercely. That judge saw through their lies. Anyone with eyes could see it. But as we walked back into that courtroom, I wasn't so sure. Linda Harper gave her closing argument first. She was good, I had to admit. She painted a picture of a loving son trying desperately to help his declining mother. A mother too proud or too confused to accept that help. "Your Honor, this isn't about money or control. It's about compassion. Dr. Mitchell watched his stepfather die 3 years ago. He's terrified of losing his mother the same way. Terrified that one day she'll leave the stove on and the house will burn down. Or she'll forget her medications and suffer a medical crisis. Or she'll fall and no one will find her for days." She paused, letting that image sink in. "Yes, Mrs. Mitchell seems competent in this controlled environment. She's lucid today. But dementia is progressive and inconsistent. There are good days and bad days. The witnesses who testified on her behalf see her on good days, during scheduled visits, when she's had time to prepare. They don't see the confusion, the memory lapses, the dangerous behaviors Dr. Mitchell has witnessed. I wanted to scream that those behaviors never happened, but I sat still, hands clenched in my lap. Dr. Mitchell isn't asking for full guardianship. He's asking for limited guardianship over financial and medical decisions, while allowing his mother to maintain as much independence as possible. That's reasonable. That's compassionate. That's what any loving son would do. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Then Elena stood. She didn't go to the podium. She stood right in front of the judge, her voice clear and strong. "Your Honor, I've been practicing elder law for 15 years. I've seen real cases of dementia, real cases of elderly people who needed guardianship for their own protection. This isn't one of them." She turned to gesture at me. Margaret Mitchell is 68 years old. She has a PhD in mathematics. She taught high school for 30 years. She volunteers at the library and tutors students. She manages her finances meticulously. She has an active social life. She's in perfect health. Elena picked up Dr. Patel's report. An independent court-appointed psychiatrist found 0 evidence of cognitive decline. 0. Not mild decline, not early signs. 0. She turned back to the judge. "So why are we here? We're here because David Mitchell is drowning in debt. $650,000 in loans and mortgage payments. 3 months behind on his house payment. And his mother has $1 million in assets that could solve all his problems." "Objection!" Linda jumped up. "That's inflammatory and—" "It's the truth," Elena cut her off. "And the evidence proves it. Every incident Dr. Mitchell described either never happened or has been proven false." "The Thanksgiving turkey that burned?" They ate at a restaurant. The phone calls about the birthday party? Phone records show they never occurred. The gas leak from the stove? Mrs. Mitchell was at the library with 6 witnesses when it allegedly happened. Elena's voice grew harder. These aren't honest mistakes, Your Honor. These are deliberate fabrications designed to paint a competent woman as incompetent so her son can access her money. That's not love. That's elder abuse. The words hung in the air. David flinched like he'd been slapped. Mrs. Jessica Mitchell testified that she's concerned for her mother-in-law's safety, but her credit card statements tell a different story. Designer purses, expensive dinners, a trip to Paris last month while they're supposedly in financial crisis. She's not concerned about Margaret's safety. She's concerned about maintaining a lifestyle she can't afford. Elena walked back to our table and picked up another document. Your Honor, I'd like to submit a supplemental filing. It's a forensic analysis of the Mitchell family finances prepared by a certified fraud examiner. It shows that within days of Robert Mitchell's death 3 years ago, Jessica Mitchell began researching guardianship laws and elder care facilities. She saved articles about how to have someone declared mentally incompetent. She was planning this before Margaret even had a chance to grieve her husband. My blood ran cold. I looked at Jessica. Her face had gone pale. David turned to look at his wife, confusion and horror dawning in his eyes. He hadn't known. She'd kept that from him, too. This guardianship petition is a scam, Elena said flatly. A calculated attempt to steal from a vulnerable widow. And this court should not only deny it, but should consider sanctions against the petitioners for abuse of process and attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person. She returned to her seat beside me. The courtroom was completely silent. Judge Martinez looked at the papers in front of him for a long moment. Then he looked at David, at Jessica, at me. I'm ready to rule, he said. My heart stopped. Elena grabbed my hand. I've presided over hundreds of guardianship cases, the judge began. I've seen families torn apart by greed. I've seen elderly people who genuinely needed protection. And I've seen cases that fall somewhere in between. He paused, and the silence was unbearable. This case is not in between. This case is clear. Mrs. Margaret Mitchell is a competent, capable woman who has been subjected to a malicious and fraudulent legal action by her own son. Relief flooded through me so intensely I thought I might pass out. The petition for guardianship is denied. Completely and unequivocally denied. David's head dropped into his hands. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm ordering Dr. David Mitchell to pay all of Mrs. Mitchell's legal fees. I'm also referring this matter to Adult Protective Services for investigation of possible elder abuse, and I strongly suggest, Mrs. Mitchell, that you consider filing a civil suit against your son and daughter-in-law for emotional distress and attempted financial exploitation. The judge's voice hardened as he looked directly at David. Dr. Mitchell, stand up. David stood slowly, looking like he might collapse. You're a physician. You took an oath to do no harm. Yet you came into this court and lied under oath about your mother's mental health. You fabricated evidence. You attempted to strip a competent woman of her autonomy and her assets. For money. Judge Martinez's voice was cold with contempt now. Young man, you didn't lose a legal case today. You lost something far more valuable. You lost your mother. You lost your integrity. You lost any claim to being called a good son or a good man. David was openly crying now, his shoulders shaking. I hope that one day you understand the magnitude of what you've done here. I hope you understand that there are some betrayals that can never be forgiven, some wounds that never heal. You've inflicted that wound on the woman who gave you life. The judge looked at me, and his expression softened slightly. Mrs. Mitchell, you're free to live your life as you see fit. You're free from this proceeding, and from any future attempts to control you. I'm also issuing a restraining order. Neither Dr. Mitchell nor Mrs. Jessica Mitchell may contact you or come within 500 feet of you or your property without your explicit permission. He banged his gavel. "This case is closed." For a moment, no one moved. Then Elena was hugging me, and Patricia was crying, and Mrs. Chen was squeezing my shoulder. Across the courtroom, Jessica was hissing something at David, gathering her purse, storming out. David just stood there, staring at me. Our eyes met one last time, and I saw it clearly now. Not malice, not greed, just a broken man who'd made terrible choices and lost everything that mattered. But seeing his pain didn't erase mine. The judge was right. Some wounds never heal. Share this if you believe that justice sometimes comes with a price that no one really wins. Because that's exactly what this felt like. The courthouse hallway was crowded, but I felt completely alone. People were congratulating me, shaking my hand, telling me how brave I was. But I couldn't hear them properly. Everything sounded muffled, distant, like I was underwater. I'd won. I'd proven I was competent. I'd kept my home, my money, my independence. The judge had sided with me completely, even gone beyond what Elena had asked for. So why did I feel like I'd lost everything? Elena was on her phone, already talking about next steps. We should absolutely file a civil suit. The emotional distress alone is worth— No, I said quietly. She stopped mid-sentence. Margaret, they tried to steal from you. They put you through hell. You deserve compensation. I don't want their money. I don't want anything from them. What I wanted was my son back. The real one. Not the stranger who'd lied on that witness stand, but the boy I'd raised. And no lawsuit, no judge, no amount of money could give me that. Patricia drove me home. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? When we pulled into my driveway, my house looked exactly the same as when I'd left that morning. But everything felt different. I'd lived in this house for 23 years. Robert and I had painted these walls, planted that garden, built a life here. David had grown up in that bedroom upstairs. Every room held memories. Now those memories felt contaminated, poisoned by what had happened. Mrs. Chen brought over dinner that evening. Homemade soup and fresh bread. "You need to eat," she insisted. "Keep your strength up." I tried, but the food tasted like nothing. I kept seeing David's face when the judge delivered that verdict. The way his composure had completely crumbled. The way he'd looked at me with such desperate, naked pain. "Do you think he meant it?" I asked Mrs. Chen suddenly. "The lies? Or do you think Jessica manipulated him into believing them?" Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Does it matter? He chose to believe her over you. He chose to go to court and try to take everything from you. Whatever his reasons, those were his choices." She was right. But it didn't make it hurt less. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying moments from the hearing. David's testimony. Jessica's cold performance, the judge's harsh words, and I kept thinking about what the judge had said. Some wounds never heal. Was that true? Was David lost to me forever? At 2 a.m, I got up and went to David's old bedroom. I'd left it mostly unchanged since he'd moved out over 15 years ago. His old trophies were still on the shelf, his high school graduation photo on the wall. A stuffed bear I'd given him when he was 5, worn and faded now. I sat on his bed and held that bear and cried. Really cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. I cried for the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, for the teenager who'd defended me against his friends' cruel jokes, for the young man who'd hugged me at his wedding and whispered, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Mom." Where did that person go? When did he disappear? The next few weeks were strange. Quiet. I went through my daily routine, library, tutoring, coffee with Mrs. Chen, but it all felt hollow, like I was just going through the motions of living without actually being alive. Elena called regularly with updates. Adult Protective Services had opened an investigation. David's medical license board had been notified about his perjured testimony. There might be professional consequences. I should have felt vindicated, but I just felt empty. Patricia tried to get me to go out more. "You're isolating yourself," she said. "That's not healthy." But being around people exhausted me. They all wanted to know about the case, congratulate me on winning, ask intrusive questions. I started avoiding the library on days I knew would be busy. One afternoon, about a month after the hearing, Mrs. Chen came over with her mail. "This got delivered to my house by mistake," she said, handing me an envelope. It was from David. My hands started shaking the moment I saw his handwriting. "Mrs." Chen squeezed my shoulder. "Do you want me to stay while you read it?" "No, I need to do this alone." After she left, I stared at that envelope for 20 minutes. Part of me wanted to throw it away, unopened. Burn it. Pretend it never came. But I couldn't. I opened it with trembling fingers and pulled out 3 handwritten pages. "Mom?" it began. Not "Dear Mom" or any formal greeting. Just Mom, like he was standing in front of me. "I know I have no right to write to you. I know I've destroyed any chance of you ever forgiving me. But I need you to know the truth. Not the lies I told in court, but the real truth. I'm drowning. I've been drowning for years. The debt, the pressure, Jessica's spending, the fear of losing everything we'd built. I felt like I was failing, as a husband, as a father, as a man. When you refused to sell the house after Robert died, Jessica started suggesting the guardianship. At first, I said no. Absolutely not. You were my mother. You'd sacrificed everything for me. I could never do that to you. But she kept pushing, and she was smart about it. She'd point out little things. Your mom seemed confused when I talked to her. She repeated that story again. Did you notice she looks thinner? She planted seeds of doubt. And I was so tired, Mom, so stressed, so desperate. I started believing her. Or maybe I wanted to believe her because it solved all my problems. I don't know anymore. By the time we filed the petition, I'd convinced myself it was for your own good. That I was protecting you. That's what I told myself when I lied on that witness stand. That I was helping you. But standing there, watching you look at me like I was a stranger, hearing the judge call me a liar and a thief, I finally saw the truth. I wasn't protecting you. I was betraying you. For money. I've lost everything now. Jessica left me 3 days after the hearing. Turns out she'd already been looking at divorce lawyers, waiting to see if the guardianship came through. If it had, she would have stayed long enough to help spend your money. When it didn't, she had no more use for me. She took Lily, my daughter, your granddaughter. I get supervised visitation twice a month while the divorce proceedings play out. I'm facing an investigation from the medical board. I might lose my license. I deserve to lose it. I'm selling the house to pay off the debts. I'll be renting a studio apartment, starting over at 42 years old with nothing. And Mom, I know this sounds crazy, but losing everything else doesn't hurt. You know what hurts? Losing you. I see your face in that courtroom every time I close my eyes. The way you looked at me, like you didn't know who I was. Like I'd become someone unrecognizable. You were right to look at me that way. I don't know who I became either. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm not asking you to let me back into your life. I have no right to ask for anything. I just needed you to know that you were right about everything. Jessica was using me. I was lying. It was about the money. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I destroyed the best thing in my life. The one person who always loved me unconditionally. And I can never fix that. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope you're living the life you deserve, free from the son who betrayed you. I love you. I always have. Even when I was doing terrible things, even when I was lying about you, some part of me still loved you. But love doesn't excuse what I did, and I understand if you can never forgive me. Your son, David. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat there holding it, tears streaming down my face. He was sorry. He understood what he'd done. He'd lost everything. But did that change anything? Did his pain erase mine? Did understanding why he betrayed me make the betrayal hurt less? I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. All I knew was that I had a choice to make. And it was the hardest choice of my life. If you've ever had to decide whether to forgive someone who destroyed you, like this video, because I still don't know what the right answer is. I didn't answer David's letter. Not that day, not that week, not for months. I put it in a drawer in my bedroom and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't. It haunted me. His words echoed in my head at night when I couldn't sleep. I destroyed the best thing in my life, Elena called about 6 weeks after the hearing. Margaret, the medical board investigation concluded. David received a formal reprimand and has to complete ethics training, but he gets to keep his license. Also, Jessica's divorce was finalized. She got primary custody of Lily. How do you know all this? I have sources. I thought you'd want to know. Did I want to know? I wasn't sure. Every piece of information about David's life felt like reopening a wound. Spring came. I planted flowers in the garden, tulips and daffodils, Robert's favorites. I'd skipped gardening the previous year, too buried in grief. But this year, I needed my hands in the dirt. Needed to create something beautiful from something broken. Mrs. Chen helped me. We worked side by side in comfortable silence, and slowly I started to feel almost human again. Patricia convinced me to join a support group. For parents estranged from adult children, she said. I found it online. Just try one meeting. I went, reluctantly. It was in a church basement, folding chairs arranged in a circle, terrible coffee in styrofoam cups. 12 people, all different ages, all with the same haunted look in their eyes. We went around the circle introducing ourselves and sharing our stories. A father whose daughter hadn't spoken to him in 8 years over a political disagreement. A mother whose son chose his wife's family over her. A woman whose 3 children cut her off completely, and she still didn't know why. When it was my turn, I told them everything. The lawsuit, the lies, the letter, the impossible choice. Do you want to forgive him? Someone asked. I don't know. Part of me does. He's still my son. But another part of me is so angry, so hurt. I don't know if I can. An older man across the circle spoke up. My daughter sued me for my inheritance when her mother died. Said I'd promised it all to her, which was a lie. We went to court. I won. That was 12 years ago. He paused. She wrote me a letter about 5 years ago. Apologizing, saying she was wrong, that her husband had pushed her into it, that she was sorry. What did you do? I asked. Nothing. I never responded. And you know what? I regret it every single day. Because 2 years ago she died. Cancer. 38 years old. And I never got to tell her that I forgave her. Never got to hold her one more time. Never got to meet my grandchildren. His voice broke. Don't make my mistake, Margaret. Don't let pride or pain rob you of time you might still have, because you don't know how much time you get. I drove home from that meeting with tears streaming down my face. That night, I took David's letter out of the drawer and read it again. Really read it, letting myself feel everything. The anger, the hurt, the love that never went away, no matter how much I wished it would. He'd made terrible choices. He'd hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible. But he was still my son. And somewhere underneath all the mistakes and lies and betrayal, there was still the boy I'd raised. The boy who brought me dandelions. The boy who needed his mother. The question wasn't whether he deserved forgiveness. the question was whether I deserved peace. And I realized that forgiveness wasn't about him. It was about me, about choosing to let go of the poison that was eating me from the inside, about choosing to live instead of just surviving. I sat down and wrote a letter back. It took me 3 days and 7 drafts. David, I got your letter. I've read it many times. I believe you're sorry. I believe you understand what you did. But believing you're sorry doesn't make the hurt go away. Trust isn't something you can rebuild with words. It's built with time and actions and consistency. I'm not ready to have you back in my life. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know, but I don't want to hate you anymore. Hating you is killing me. So I'm choosing to let that go. Not for you. For me. This doesn't mean I forgive you. Not yet. Maybe someday. But right now, all I can offer is this. I don't wish you harm. I hope you're getting help. I hope you're learning from your mistakes. I hope you're becoming the man you were supposed to be. If you want to prove you've changed, don't write me letters. Live differently. Be a good father to Lily. Be honest. Be kind. Be the person you promised me you'd be when I raised you. Maybe in a year or 2 years or 5 years we can talk. Maybe. But I need time. I need space. I need to heal. I don't hate you, David. I wish I did. It would be easier. But I also can't pretend that what happened didn't happen. You broke something between us, and I don't know if it can ever be fixed. Take care of yourself. Mom. I mailed it before I could change my mind. David wrote back 3 weeks later. Just 2 sentences. Thank you for not hating me. I'll wait as long as you need. I'll wait forever. That was 18 months ago. I haven't seen David since that day in court. But every few months I get a card. Never asking for anything. Just updates. He got a new apartment. He's in therapy. He reconciled with Lily. He started volunteering at a free clinic. I don't respond to the cards, but I keep them. In a box in my closet, next to the old Mother's Day cards he made as a child. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to see him again. Some days I think maybe. Some days I think never. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm not consumed by bitterness. I'm living my life. Really living it. I took a trip to Italy last fall. Something I'd always wanted to do. I've started painting, something I gave up when I had David because I was too busy working to support us. I joined a book club. I'm tutoring more students. I even went on a date, though it didn't go anywhere. Maybe the next one will. Patricia asked me last week if I regret not forgiving David completely. I thought about it for a long time. I don't regret protecting myself, I finally said. Maybe someday I'll be ready to let him back in. Maybe I won't. Either way, it has to be on my terms. I spent my whole life putting him first. It's my turn now. Mrs. Chen says I seem lighter, happier, like I've put down a weight I'd been carrying. She's right. I have. The judge was right about one thing. Some wounds never fully heal. There's still a scar where my relationship with my son used to be. Sometimes it aches. Sometimes I miss him so much I can barely breathe. But I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I'm free. Free from the fear that my own family would destroy me. Free from the constant vigilance, the second-guessing, the pain. Free to live my life on my own terms. I don't know if David and I will ever reconcile. I don't know if I'll ever trust him again. I don't know if, someday, we'll sit across from each other and rebuild something from the ashes of what we lost. But I know this. I survived. I fought for myself when no one else would. I proved my worth, my competence, my right to live my own life. And no one can ever take that from me again. Last month, I got another card from David. Inside was a picture of Lily. She's 10 now, beautiful, with my eyes. David had written on the back, "She asks about you sometimes. I tell her you're the strongest woman I've ever known, because you are." I put that picture on my refrigerator, not because I've forgiven him, not because I'm ready to see him, but because maybe, someday, I might be. And until then, I'm choosing to believe that even broken things can find a kind of peace, even if they're never whole again. The judge gave me back my freedom that day in court, but I gave myself something more important. I gave myself permission to heal, on my own timeline, in my own way. And that's enough. For now, that's more than enough.